So what do you think about this new, the National Energy Code? What is it? I don't know what the fuck it stands for. Give me a second here. Cut, Tom. Cut. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, yeah. So the new National Energy Code for Canadian buildings that was just updated 2017. This is an interesting topic. I mean, this is a very, very quick coverage. So I was talking to an engineering friend of mine who told me that there was a significant push, especially in Canada. And I was talking to Tom about this the other day, is that the reason why we're seeing all these buildings come up in an economy where there's no money, like Alberta is dead. Like this is the worst recession that we've ever gone through since the Great Depression. But somehow, everywhere downtown, there are construction sites, buildings, people are employed in the construction industry. Why does that happen? So I dug a little bit deeper and I talked to this gentleman that works at a very, very large, reputed engineering firm. And his thought was that while there's no money in the industry today, the new NECB, the new energy code that came out, has a deadline or a due date after which if you start projects, you have to adhere to the new code. And because of that, obviously the new code means, new energy efficiency guidelines and measures and tighter envelopes and better, more efficient equipment and higher standards for everything, energy conservation, consumption, and the byproducts like your, whether it's your carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, whatever
so what you're saying is
emissions.
We're speeding up all this construction so we can tone down the quality before it comes
Exactly.
into effect.
So this is an interesting topic, is that, a lot of these builders, especially large commercial high-rise developers who are just, and you know what? I really don't care that I'm saying this. I know that for a fact, all of these developers, especially in the downtown Vancouver and Metrotown Burnaby, New West, like all these areas that have towers flying out of the ground, in Calgary as well, where there's towers everywhere, but nobody to live in them. Like the population of Calgary, people are leaving Calgary because the oil and gas industry is dying, but somehow, and commercial vacancy is going up and up and up. But for some reason, we have more construction happening, more buildings going in. Why? Because people don't want to pay extra when the new energy code deadline is due. So they get all these buildings in now so that they can build cheaper and actually, not have to build things that are actually more efficient and better, not only for the environment. And I don't want this to be like a green agenda, but one, there's that, and two, there's let's just go for lower quality product and lower cost product. And the caveat was that as long as you start construction and do groundwork by a certain time, you are grandfathered into the old code.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes sense that this kind of happens usually, but especially in a time where the country is going through a recession, why not pause? I mean, the argument is, we're creating jobs.
Yeah, okay, so. Again, you're going to hear me beat you over the head with we're not informing the end user.
Yeah.
If we inform the end user that this building is more efficient, people will pay more to be somewhere that's more efficient.
I mean,
because
maybe not right now, though.
No, absolutely right now. What are we talking the difference? Like, are we talking 10% more?
It might be 10, it might be 20, it might be 40. We don't know exactly what that number is, though.
Listen,
right? And they don't know that number, and then that's why they're not taking the risk.
I buy organic vegetables because they're better for me.
No, the science is not conclusive on that.
I'm not great at cooking.
Clearly, fucking Edward Scissorhands over here.
But what I'm saying is that, I do my research, and maybe it's because of the industry that I've been in, where I'm absolutely pissed off that our end users don't know anything of what we do. But I think that what is going to attract people as the recession comes back is going to be a building that is more energy efficient. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a lower cost of operating, because that's what's going to get tenants in. People are thinking about this on a regular, like this is part of your purchasing decision. It is your cost of operating, right? Why we do upgrades on old buildings, and that's the only time we deal with the end users during renovation. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, sir, we can take out that old inefficient system. We can give you a top of the line it is going to cost you less to operate, and your payback is going to be at the 6.5 year mark. Do you plan on owning this building for more than 6.5 years? Like, we're not even getting into what the resale value is on that building for having the updated equipment.
Let alone it's rental only.
Yes.
Then that's a different it's just garbage.
Well, yeah. And so this is why I say
the quality. I mean, Tom is in the background going, "Why?" I mean, we're talking about homeowner education and end consumer education.
But
it's like,
but it's not even homeowner. This is commercial.
Sure, yeah, tenant education.
Yes. Like, we sit there and we have all the tenants that have to do these improvements on their own, the tenant improvements, right? The building owner provides a base structure, usually puts in the cheapest, most inefficient shit possible. Mm-hmm. And then in order for that business to be profitable, it has to lower the things it can control, which is the cost of operating.
Yeah.
So then after the fact, they take out that old inefficient water heater and they put in something that's modulating that will ramp up based on the consumption. Yeah. Right? So it can deal with the consumption. And this is right for like production. I've seen commercial kitchen where all the food trucks work out of, that they rent this space and they all have these time slots to go in and do food prep, and they run out of hot water, so they can't sanitize, they can't do any of this. And then they get a contractor who comes in and actually says, well, if we put a tankless water heater in or a boiler and a tank in here, you're going to increase your efficiency by 30%. You're never going to run out of hot water. So all of those food trucks aren't going to leave you to go to a different kitchen so that they can do their big prep, right? Because they need to be in a commercial kitchen that meets certain standards for food prep. They can't do it at home unless they're going to convert their home.
And in that scenario, the person who's doing the new build, I mean, you can't expect someone to build for 50 years, right? For the equipment, but at the same time, you can expect some decent modicum of like product that will last at least 5 to maybe 10 years. But
Fresh, whenever you're doing anything in sales, whether it's leasing out to customers, whether it's selling a product with features, you're identifying who your target market is. So if you're sitting there building a very efficient building, you're going to attract people that is a concern. Yeah. And they're going to surround themselves by people that have those same principles.
And the interesting thing is that, within that world, the minute we talked about rental buildings because, it's a shit show and consumers and homeowners, not even homeowners, tenants and people that are, currently on the market. If you walk into a building and they tell you this is a rental only, there's an individual manager that manages the entire building, fucking run. Because as new as that building might be, they have built that building with the least amount of care and the least investment possible. And I am so sick and tired.
For the most part.
For the most part. Like, and this is not an overgeneralization. This is a stereotype because it's true. And it's, these are these properties that are, eventually when that lifespan of that building starts to wane and the building starts to fall apart, it gets scooped up by these asset management companies and these property management companies. There's a lot, these names I can name right now, but those buildings in your neighborhood, in your city that, you see that name X organization everywhere. And they have, all these old shit buildings. Why? Because that's their business. They buy decrepit, derelict buildings and they rent them for cheap, and it's garbage, and they just cycle through people every couple of years. And that model is not meant to hold a community. And this has this has overarching effects on the construct of society. Because if you have people coming in and out and you have this like transient, environment, you can't develop neighborhoods, you can't develop community, you can't develop an effective society. This is like, the lack of investment in our, in our actual communities doesn't stem from the government alone. It's significantly, the onus falls on those developers building properties. And, I live in a neighborhood right now that's considered up and coming, right? Up and coming, why? Because there's tons of, apartment buildings coming around where we live. Our building was built in 2009. It's got 15 units in it. The smallest unit is 800 square feet, 1 bedroom, right? It's built to LEED silver. It's got a green roof. It's got, and when they built it, it was not cheap, right? Our apartment that I live in right now, We got it for over close to $100,000 less than the initial value when they built it, right? And I mean, we got it for a steal. Now, if we compare it to the proposed, buildings that they wanted to build adjacent and across the street from us, small lots, probably 15, feet high buildings, or just down the couple blocks from there where they're building some higher density multifamily. They're building wood frame. They're building, and that's the thing is that yes, you support Canadian lumber and wood in the forestry industry, but it's like when you build wood frame, automatically the message you're sending is I don't give a shit about the quality of life of people that live in that building. Right, and unless you're investing heavily in insulation.
No, but it's not even that. It comes down to selling those features for the end user, right? People don't know why wood frame's not good, right? People don't know why double pane, triple gain, like windows
nobody knows
better or worse. Nobody knows why having a heating system that is
I didn't know what a hydronic versus a forced air system was until maybe 4 years into the industry. And you were the one who taught me, right? And it's so interesting is that I know for a fact that if there's any unless someone who's an average Joe, a layperson that's watching is, someone who's not in the trades, it's not mechanically inclined, isn't an engineer, comes from maybe less so in a place like Calgary or Edmonton where there's a lot more, there's a lot more involvement in the actual home and people build their own stuff. I think Calgary, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, for the most part, because of the way that the cities are spread out, people are more independent, and that means people are more knowledgeable, maybe, for a certain extent. But my generation, the millennials and the upcoming generation, the Gen Zs, the ones that are, fully into technology and not really, interested in the construction, handy side. Again, this is a overgeneralization, but I can guarantee that at least 51% of my current generation that lives in urban centers has no clue about what is in their building, what kind of heating system they have.
I absolutely disagree. And the reason why I disagree is because Calgary built a building that had no parking. It's close to the LRT. It is very efficient. It appealed, to the generation of people who give a shit, who make it a point not to drive a car, who live close to work, who can take transit. That was the people that it mattered to. Mm-hmm. And how fast did that sell out? I think every unit was sold out in 3 weeks.
Sure, but that was a job that was not necessarily a conscious effort at making a, okay, I agree. Calgary. I agree. This is kind of making my point. Yeah. Because, the thing is that people don't know. People don't know enough about what goes into a building unless you tell them.
And so what had changed on that whole sales approach was not a sales approach, but an education approach.
Yeah.
Right? The end user was educated making a purchasing decision. And I know people that are in there that actually rent out their unit. They didn't buy it for them to live in it. They bought it for an investment. Yeah. And it was an investment that was going to get a different kind of renter.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we saw one of those apartments. It's right downtown, first condo. I think it's in East Village in Calgary. It's like they give bike spots, or they give you I think a bike,
a locker.
There was a building that if you bought in the initials, like the first purchase, during development or before development, they gave you a bike with the home, and they give you a bike, and they gave you a free 1 year unlimited membership to like those car to go or Zoom car or something like that. And that was like the model. And it's like, to be honest, if you ask me, I don't think that like emphasizing to those people about like this is the technology really kind of got through in the sense that people understood what the technology was and how it worked and why it was better. People just saw, it was what's that word? Greenwashing. Like it was a lot of greenwashing. Yeah. And I think that there really is value, and I consider myself so lucky that I stumbled into the construction, building, and plumbing and mechanical industry to understand so much more. And there's so much I don't know, and there's so much that my friends have no clue on. And this isn't a knock on them, but those friends that grew up, where dads did all the work at home, built their own home, like those friends, they know a lot about it.
Yeah.
Like my wife, her dad is a plumber and been a plumber for 40 plus years. Just recently retired. Like you'd be surprised, even in that family, maybe how much information gets trickled down.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really important. And I think it's really, really important that instead of the government, and I think maybe this is trying to pivot back outside of private businesses being responsible, because we can't really like depend on a corporation or a business that's out to make profit to necessarily put that first. Although they should, because there's a clear reward.
We talk about on our show all the time about separating yourself from the competition.
I agree.
What is a better way than finding a market? Because, look at the growth of Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not just Calgarians having babies. That's people moving here, right? These are people that are moving here from Vancouver, from the U.S., from other parts of the world, where this is important. Like how many Europeans come here and laugh at our inefficient buildings? Yeah. These are people that have renovated 500-year-old buildings to make them more efficient than our new construction. So at the end of the day, the fact that we're racing to build these lower efficient buildings.
Insufficient. That's what they're not inefficient. They're not efficient. They're just insufficient to what the actual market needs today. And I think that's completely agreeing with Jeff's point of like the education doesn't need to come from the developer or the builder, because guess what? They're in it to make a profit. And unless that, and even when they do say, hey, we're efficient, we're this, we're that, don't trust it on the surface level. Do your research if you're a homeowner.
Here's the point. How many of you guys have gone out to buy a new car? Let's say it's a brand new car. How many of you guys have bought the entry-level model of that vehicle? If you don't do it for your car, which is your second largest investment, apparently, why the hell would you do it for your house? That's your largest investment.
Especially if you're buying a single family home, even if you're buying a condo.
Even if it's an investment property, it's still going to be more appealing than the entry-level shit one with the fucking key entry that you have to go in and unlock, that has no air conditioning.
I mean, we will kind of say that though. If affordability is an issue, this is this falls out.
Shit, you can get a better mortgage because it's a better built property.
Potentially, yeah.
Not potentially. Go see a fucking mortgage broker. Stop building shit.